Before we dive into the story, tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. What is the ultimate betrayal? A high-powered husband secretly deletes his wife from the guest list for a major gala, the most important night of his career, and replaces her with his mistress. He wanted her invisible, a boring, amateur wife he'd left behind. He told everyone she was indisposed. He thought he had won. But what happens when the indisposed wife you just erased shows up as the event's lead sponsor? It's time to find out. Please hit the like button now to support this story, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking narratives. The Gilded Cage. Silence in the penthouse. The air in the Drake penthouse was like that of a museum. Beautiful, climate-controlled, and utterly devoid of life. It clung to the massive abstract paintings and the sterile white marble floors of their City View apartment. For Harper Thorne, the silence was the loudest thing in her life. It was a constant reminder of the chasm that had opened between her and her husband, Alistair Drake. By all appearances, they were a power couple. Alistair was a senior partner at the prestigious law firm, Sterling, Draper, and Pierce, a man whose ambition was as sharp and tailored as his expensive suits. Harper, to the outside world, was the elegant, quiet wife, the perfect hostess, the silent support system. It was a role she had once played with love, but now wore like a heavy, leaden cloak. The change had been gradual, a slow erosion over the past few years. Alistair's successes had inflated his ego until it filled every room, leaving no space for her. He had begun to see her not as a partner, but as an accessory, a beautiful, well-bred ornament to display at galas and dinners. He had forgotten the woman he married, the razor-sharp software architect with fire in her eyes. He had willfully stopped asking about her work. "It's just some computer geek stuff, right?" he'd once said, with a dismissive wave when a friend inquired. "Keeps her busy." Harper hadn't corrected him. She had let him believe it, let him think her company, Thorne Innovations, was a little hobby, a passion project she tinkered with from her home office. She never told him when she secured her third round of funding, when her user base surpassed 10 million, or when Microsoft had tried to buy her out for a figure that would make his annual salary look like a rounding error. Her silence was her sanctuary, the one part of her life he hadn't yet managed to tarnish with his condescension. The first cut, an invitation the beginning of the end, came on a crisp Tuesday afternoon. Harper was in her office, a sleek, minimalist space that contrasted sharply with the rest of the penthouse, deep in a conference call with her development team in Zurich. They were finalizing the launch of Athena, a revolutionary data encryption software already making waves in the tech industry. "The preliminary reports from the beta testers are flawless," her lead engineer, Noah Miller, said, his voice buzzing with excitement over the speakerphone. "The security protocols hold. We've thrown everything we have at it, and it's a fortress." A rare, genuine smile touched Harper's lips. "Excellent work, Noah. Let's keep to the schedule. I want to be ready for the Q4 launch." She ended the call with a sense of pride and accomplishment, a warm current in her veins. This was hers. She had built it from the ground up, fueled by late nights, relentless determination, and an unwavering belief in her vision. The door to her office opened without a knock. Alistair stood there, holding a thick, cream-colored envelope. He didn't acknowledge her call or the schematics on her screen. His focus was entirely on the invitation in his hand. "It's here," he announced, his voice ringing with self-importance. "The invitation to the Starlight Foundation Gala." Harper turned in her chair. The Starlight Foundation was the city's preeminent children's charity, and its annual gala was the absolute peak of the social calendar. It was a night of immense networking, where fortunes were donated and careers were forged. For Alistair, whose firm represented the foundation. It was the most important night of the year. "That's wonderful, dear," she said, her voice even. He strode into the room, placing the envelope on her desk, but keeping his hand firmly on it. "This year is different. I'm on the hosting committee. Ms. Victoria Hale herself told me my speech this year is crucial to securing the Henderson account." He was practically vibrating with nervous energy and ambition. "Everything has to be perfect." Harper looked at the invitation. "Mr. Alistair Drake and guest," it read. Not Mr. and Mrs. Alistair Drake. A small detail, perhaps a simple oversight by the event planners, but in the context of their marriage, it felt like a paper cut. Tiny, yet sharp and stinging. "And guest?" she asked, raising a delicate eyebrow. Alistair had the decency to look momentarily flustered. "It's a standard format they use, darling. Don't be pedantic. You're obviously my guest." He said the word guest as though he were bestowing a great honor upon her. As if she were a stranger, he was condescendingly agreeing to escort. He didn't see the flicker of pain in her eyes, or if he did, he chose to ignore it. He was too busy looking at his own reflection in the darkened glass of her monitor. "I'll need you to wear the sapphire dress," he continued, already planning the night like a military campaign. "The one we bought in Milan. And please, have your hair professionally done. No severe bun. Something soft, approachable." "Approachable," Harper repeated, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. "Yes. And darling," he added, his tone shifting to one of strained patience. "When we're there, maybe you could socialize less, or at least stick with the other wives. Last year, you got into that dreadfully boring conversation about, what was it, algorithmic ethics, with that tech billionaire. It was terribly off-putting. People don't want to talk business at these things." The man he referred to, a Silicon Valley titan, had sought her out after hearing whispers about her work. The conversation had led to a lucrative consulting contract for Thorne Innovations. But Alistair saw none of that. He only saw his wife failing to perform her designated role as a silent, smiling prop. "I understand," she said, her voice a placid lake over a furious current. "I'll do my utmost not to be off-putting." Satisfied, Alistair finally let go of the invitation and turned to leave. "Good. This is my night, Harper. Our future at the firm. My path to a named partnership. Everything hinges on this. I can't afford any distractions." As the door clicked shut, Harper stared at the invitation. "Mr. Alistair Drake and guest." A guest in her own life, an accessory to his. The warmth from her successful call with Noah had vanished, replaced by a familiar, chilling cold. She looked at the reflection in the monitor, past the fleeting image of Alistair, and saw herself. She saw the exhaustion in her eyes, but beneath it, a glint of the fire he thought he'd extinguished. He had called the night his night. He had said he couldn't afford distractions. He had no idea, she thought, a grim sense of determination beginning to form. How big a distraction could be. The gilded cage had become a prison, and she was finally ready to find the key. Only, she didn't realize Alistair was about to hand it to her himself. The ultimate deception, Alistair Drake felt a surge of triumphant power as he walked the hallowed halls of Sterling, Draper, and Pierce. The rich mahogany walls, adorned with portraits of stern-faced founders, seemed to approve of him. He was a man on the ascent, and the Starlight Gala would be his coronation. But a nagging unease pricked at the edges of his confidence. Harper. She was becoming unpredictable. Her quietness, which he'd once mistaken for obedience, now felt like a form of judgment. The way she looked at him across the dinner table, her eyes unreadable, gave him the shivers. He hated that he couldn't decipher her, that a part of her remained stubbornly hers. And her hobby, Thorne Innovations, was a source of constant low-grade irritation. He didn't understand it, so he dismissed it. It was easier than admitting his wife might be brilliant in a field he couldn't grasp. His unease crystallized into a plan during a lunch meeting 2 weeks before the gala. The meeting was with Scarlett Lawrence. Scarlett was a junior associate at the firm, but she moved with a predatory panther's grace. She had keen, intelligent eyes, a razor-sharp wit, and an ambition that rivaled Alistair's own. She had attached herself to him ostensibly for mentorship, but the dynamic was far more charged. She flattered his ego, hung on his every word, and made him feel like the industry titan he so desperately wanted to be. She was everything he thought he wanted, ambitious, focused on his world, and utterly unconcerned with anything but him. They were seated at the Capitol Grill, a steakhouse where $100 ribeyes sealed deals. "Victoria Hale was praising you at the partners' meeting this morning," Scarlett said, leaning forward, her voice a low purr. "She said the Henderson account is practically yours if the gala goes well." "It will," Alistair said, straightening his tie. "There's just the matter of the guest list." Scarlett took a delicate sip of her wine. "Oh, is there an issue?" Alistair hesitated, feigning nonchalance. "Harper. She hasn't been herself lately. Very deep in her little projects. I worry she'll be a distraction. You know how she can be, talking about things no one understands. It's not the right image." Scarlett's expression was a masterpiece of calculated sympathy. "That must be so difficult for you, Alistair, to be on the verge of something so big and have to worry about your partner reflecting the right image. Image is everything in our world." She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. The invitation did say "and guest," didn't it? That's quite flexible. A seed of an idea, dark and treacherous, began to sprout in Alistair's mind. He could simply uninvite her. But the fallout, the questions, the sheer, unpleasant domestic situation was a deterrent. "It would be messy," he said, testing the waters. Scarlett's smile was sharp. "Messiness can be managed. Discretion is a lawyer's greatest tool, after all." She leaned closer, her expensive, intoxicating perfume filling his senses. "Who is the gala coordinator? Melissa at the foundation, right? She's friends with my sister. One phone call, a plausible reason, a sudden illness perhaps, an unavoidable prior engagement she simply forgot. It would be a shame for her to feel pressured to attend if she isn't feeling well," Scarlett continued softly. "It would be a kindness, really. You'd be sparing her a night she clearly wouldn't enjoy." She was a master at reframing betrayal as consideration. She gave him not just a plan, but a justification. He wouldn't be a villain. He'd be a caring husband. The idea took root and grew its thorny vines around his ambition. The vision of the gala solidified in his mind. Him at the podium, powerful and eloquent. Scarlett at his table, looking up at him with undisguised admiration. And Harper? Harper would be home, out of sight and out of mind, puttering away at whatever it was she did. The next day, Alistair made the call. He waited until Harper had gone out for a rare meeting away from the office. She hadn't bothered to explain it. He closed his study door, his heart hammering against his ribs. A strange mix of guilt and exhilarating freedom coursed through him. He dialed the Starlight Foundation events office number. "May I speak to the coordinator? Alistair Drake calling." A moment later, the coordinator's cheerful voice came on the line. "Alistair, so good to hear from you. We're all so excited for the gala. Your support has been incredible." "Right, happy to help," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Listen, I'm calling about a small, rather delicate matter regarding the guest list. It appears there has been a slight miscommunication on my part. My wife, Harper, will, unfortunately, be unable to attend." "Oh no, is everything all right?" He let out a perfectly crafted sigh. She's been dreadfully run down lately, pushing herself too hard with a personal project. I've been insisting she take it easy, and she's finally agreed. She feels awful about it, of course, but her health must come first. She sends her deepest apologies. Oh, the poor dear. Of course, we completely understand, the coordinator said, her voice full of sympathy. Please send her our best. So the ticket will just be for you then, or will you be bringing a guest instead? This was the moment, the final twist of the screw. Actually, yes, he said, as if the idea had just occurred to him. One of my junior associates, Scarlett Lawrence, has been instrumental in preparing the brief for the Henderson account. It would be an invaluable experience for her. Would it be possible to switch the name on the place card to hers? Not a problem at all, Alistair. Consider it done. We'll have a Miss Scarlett Lawrence card at your table. Thank you. You're a lifesaver. I appreciate your discretion. Of course. He hung up the phone, a wave of relief washing over him. It was done. It had been so easy. He had surgically removed Harper from his big night. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out over the city he felt was finally his. He felt no remorse, only a cold, clean sense of efficiency. He had identified a problem, an unpredictable variable, and he had eliminated it. That evening, he was unusually charming to Harper. He brought home a bottle of her favorite Chardonnay and didn't mention the gala. He asked one superficial question about her day, and when she gave a vague answer, he accepted it without pressing. He was playing the role of the caring husband, one last deceitful performance before the curtain rose on his solo act. He watched her across the table, this woman who was now a stranger to him. She was quiet, her thoughts hidden behind a tranquil facade. He mistook her silence for ignorance. He mistook her composure for passivity. He believed, with the full force of his arrogant heart, that she had no idea what was coming. He was convinced he held all the cards, oblivious to the fact that Harper wasn't just playing a different game. She owned the entire casino. Black pawn. The architect draws her plans. The weeks leading up to the gala were a masterclass in silent, furious theater. For Alistair, it was a week of blissful ignorance. He was absorbed in polishing his speech, coordinating talking points with Scarlett, and basking in the anticipated glory of his impending triumph. He saw Harper's quiet demeanor as submission, her long hours in her office as her retreat into her irrelevant world. He felt smug, secure, and completely in control. For Harper, it was a week of strategic warfare, fought not with shouts and tears, but with emails, conference calls, and the silent, immense power of her wealth. She was not a woman scorned. She was a CEO executing a hostile takeover of her own narrative. Her first move after securing the lead sponsorship through Chase Donovan was to call the Starlight Foundation coordinator. She did not mention Alistair. She introduced herself as the CEO of Thorne Innovations, the new Starlight sponsor of the gala. Ms. Thorne, I'm speechless, the coordinator said, stunned and euphoric. Your generosity is just overwhelming. Mr. Donovan explained you wished for us to proceed with the utmost discretion until the night of the gala. That is correct, Harper said, her voice cool and professional. My company values privacy. We prefer our work to speak for itself. I will, however, be attending. I will, of course, require a seat. Of course, absolutely. We have you at the head table. Naturally. The coordinator shuffled her seating chart. Oh, there appears to be a slight issue. Table 1 is the hosting committee table, headed by Alistair Drake of Sterling, Draper, and Pierce. He has a full guest list. Harper let the silence draw out for a beat. I am certain Mr. Drake, whose firm does so much work for the foundation, will be thrilled to accommodate the event's lead sponsor. Please add a seat for me at that table. I'm sure you can make it work. Her tone was polite, yet left no room for negotiation. "Yes, of course, Miss Thorne. Right away." "One more thing," Harper added. "Under no circumstances are you to inform Mr. Drake of this change or my company's sponsorship. Let's keep it a secret for the night. A little drama for the big reveal, don't you think?" Imagining the moment a mysterious benefactor would be unveiled, the coordinator readily agreed. "A marvelous idea, Miss Thorne. It will be the talk of the town." Next, Harper focused on her appearance. Alistair wanted her soft and approachable. He had requested the sapphire gown from Milan. Harper sold the dress online that same afternoon. She then placed a call to a private dressmaker, a woman known for creating gowns that were less garments and more works of art. Armor for the modern woman. "I need something for a gala," Harper explained during a video call, the designer's chic Parisian studio in the background. "The theme is starlight. I am not a guest. I am the main event. I want to look like I own the stars, not just observe them." The designer's eyes lit up with creative fire. They settled on a design of midnight black silk, custom woven with fine platinum-like threads that would catch the light like a constellation. It would be sleeveless, with a sharp architectural neckline that conveyed power, not pliancy. It was a dress that would demand attention, a dress that didn't ask for permission. To accompany it, she commissioned a stunning necklace and earrings, not soft diamonds, but raw, uncut sapphires set in jagged modern platinum. Beautiful, but with a hint of danger. As her public armor was being forged, Harper worked on her business. She called a special meeting with her PR and marketing team. "Project Athena is launching Q4, she told them, her voice commanding. "But I want the pre-launch buzz to begin next week, specifically the night of the Starlight Gala. I want a coordinated press release to hit every major tech and business journal precisely at 9 p.m. that night. The release will announce Thorne Innovations as the Starlight sponsor, and also announce Athena's revolutionary capabilities. I want our stock price to be the second biggest story of the night." Her team, sensing the shift in their usually reserved CEO, scrambled to comply, a current of excitement running through them. Finally, she prepared herself. This wasn't just about humiliating Alistair. That was a satisfying byproduct, but not the end goal. The goal was her liberation. It was about drawing a line so deep and clear in the sand that he could never again cross it. It was about reclaiming her identity, not as Mrs. Alistair Drake, but as Harper Thorne, founder and CEO of a company she had built from nothing. The grand entrance, on the night of the gala, the penthouse was still and silent. Alistair was in their master suite, whistling as he put on his tuxedo. He felt like a king surveying his domain. He had laid his plans perfectly. Harper was in the guest wing, an area of the apartment he hadn't stepped into in months. Her gown was laid out on the bed, the dark fabric seeming to absorb the light in the room. Her jewels glittered on the bedside table like captured starlight. Noah had arranged a private car to pick her up. She would arrive not with the crowd of guests, but at the precise moment of the sponsor reveal. At 7 o'clock, Alistair tapped on her bedroom door, where he assumed she was. "Harper, I'm leaving now. Scarlett is meeting me there." From the other end of the long hall, behind the closed door of the guest suite, Harper heard him. She stood before a full-length mirror, a vision of midnight and power. She said nothing. Her silence was her reply. Alistair waited one more moment, then shrugged, a cruel smile on his lips. "All right, have a quiet night in," he called out, his voice dripping with false sympathy. He turned and walked out the door, jingling his car keys, leaving his quiet, discreet wife behind. He felt a twinge of something, but crushed it. It was the price of ambition, he told himself. Harper watched from her window as his car pulled away from the curb, a sleek silver bullet disappearing into the glittering city chaos. She took a deep, steadying breath. She wasn't being left behind. She was being unleashed. The architect had drawn the blueprints. The trap was set. Now, all she had to do was make her entrance. The reveal. The climax. The main ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel was a symphony of opulence. Crystal chandeliers, each the size of a small car, cast a dazzling fractured light over a sea of tuxedos and designer gowns. The air hummed with the sound of clinking champagne glasses, discreet gossip, and the loud, confident laughter of the city's elite. Alistair Drake moved through the crowd like a conquering hero, the stunning Scarlett Lawrence on his arm. He felt invincible. Her dress was a vibrant crimson, a stark, deliberate contrast to the soft look he had demanded of Harper. She was a statement, and her presence signaled his new direction. "You've really outdone yourself, Alistair," Victoria Hale, the firm's managing partner, said, patting him on the back. "A full table. Henderson is here. The night is already a success." "We aim to please, Victoria," Alistair replied smoothly, squeezing Scarlett's hand. "We're just getting started." He took his seat at the head table, right in the center, a king presiding over court. He surveyed the room, a deep sense of satisfaction nesting in his chest. Everything was perfect. Every person was in their place. Across the table, the billionaire CEO whose account he was courting gave a hearty nod. Scarlett was whispering something amusing to another partner's wife. There was no trace of Harper, no awkward questions, no prying glances. He had achieved a clean cut. The night went exactly as he had imagined. Dinner was exquisite. The wine flowed freely, and the preliminary speeches were brief and witty. Alistair felt the warm glow of success and several glasses of champagne. He leaned into Scarlett, his voice a low murmur. "See? What did I tell you? Flawless," she whispered back, her eyes shining. "No distractions. Just you." Finally, the moment arrived. The lights dimmed slightly, and the Starlight Foundation's president took the stage. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome," he began, his voice booming across the ballroom. "On behalf of the children, we thank you for your incredible generosity tonight. We have raised a record amount, and it's thanks to every single one of you." A polite round of applause swept the room. "But every year," the president continued, his tone turning more dramatic, "there is one donor whose contribution transcends generosity, a partner who steps up to become the very foundation of this event, our Starlight sponsor." Alistair straightened, a self-satisfied smile on his face. He knew the usual corporate sponsors. It would be a bank or a major corporation. He was ready to lead the applause for the faceless entity that had paid for the evening. "This year, we were approached by a brand new partner," the president announced, a genuine sense of excitement in his voice. "A true visionary, a silent force in an industry that is all noise, a leader who has built an empire not on who they know, but on what they can create." A murmur went through the crowd. This was not the usual script. Alistair looked at Scarlett, a flicker of confusion in his eyes. Scarlett shrugged, equally bewildered. "This company and its founder represent the future," the president thundered. "They represent innovation, integrity, and the bright, unstoppable power of a single, revolutionary idea. Their work in data security is changing the world, securing a safer future for the children we seek to protect." Alistair felt an odd chill at the back of his neck. Data security. Revolutionary idea. The wording sounded vague, horribly familiar. He looked around the room, expecting to see some well-known tech CEO step into the light. "It is a profound honor," the president declared, his voice reaching a crescendo, "to announce this year's Starlight sponsor, a company that has truly illuminated our night. Thorn Innovations." The name hit Alistair like a physical force. Thorn Innovations. Harper's hobby, her Little project. He felt the blood drain from his face. It couldn't be. It was a coincidence. Some other Thorn. But the president wasn't finished. And please rise as we welcome the architect of this incredible generosity, the founder and CEO of Thorn Innovations, Ms. Harper Thorn. As he spoke the name, the grand double doors at the end of the ballroom swung open. And there she was. For a moment there was complete silence, a collective intake of breath from Betrayal, of the city's most powerful people. Harper paused in the doorway, a figure of stunning power and control. Her midnight silk gown drank the light, the platinum threads shimmering like a distant galaxy. The raw sapphires at her neck were not soft jewels. They were fragments of the night sky, bold and defiant. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, sleek style that highlighted the determined line of her jaw. She was not soft. She was not approachable. She was magnificent. Then the reaction started. It began at the front with Chase Donovan, who was already on his feet, a proud smile on his face. Then others, recognizing the name from budding tech articles, or simply stunned by the sheer drama of the moment, stood up. The applause began scattered at first, then built into a thundering wave of sound. One by one, table by table, the entire room rose to its feet. They weren't just applauding a donor. They were witnessing an arrival. Alistair remained frozen in his chair, a statue of pure shock. His champagne glass was still in his hand. He stared, his mind unable to assemble the pieces into the terrifying image his eyes were showing him. This wasn't his wife. This was not the quiet, discreet woman he had left at home. This was a supernova, a celestial event dressed in midnight silk and captured starlight. Scarlett Lawrence was equally stunned, her face a mask of disbelief and nascent horror. Her crimson dress, which had looked so bold and vibrant moments before, now looked gaudy and cheap next to Harper's celestial elegance. She looked from Harper to Alistair and saw the color completely drain from his face. She had hitched her wagon to a falling star. Harper's eyes scanned the standing crowd, her expression tranquil and regal. She gave a small, dignified gesture of thanks, and then her gaze moved deliberately, slowly, across the room until it landed on table 1. It passed over the astonished faces of partners and sponsors, and finally settled on Alistair. She did not smile. She did not sneer. Her look was one of cold, dispassionate assessment. It was the look a CEO gives to a redundant employee, a look that said, "You are irrelevant." As the applause roared around her, Harper began to walk. She did not rush. Her steps were measured, her posture perfect. She moved through the standing crowd, who parted for her as if by royal decree. Her destination was clear: the empty seat at the head table, the seat the coordinator had squeezed in, per instruction, between Victoria Hale and Alistair Drake. The seat that now, indisputably, belonged to her. The sound hit Alistair first. It wasn't just applause, it was a physical force, a blunt wave of sound that seemed to press him into his velvet-cushioned chair. 300 of the city's most influential figures were standing. Their faces were turned to her. His mind stuttered, refusing to assemble the pieces into the terrifying image his eyes showed him. As she began her walk, Alistair felt a primal urge to hide, to shrink beneath the table. Every step she took toward him was a drumbeat marking the seconds until his own execution. The faces she passed, people he had spent years trying to impress, turned to her in awe, their expressions a mixture of shock and deep admiration. They were a jury, and with every clap, they cast their verdict. He was frozen in a nightmare of his own making, the solitary fool seated in a sea of standing admirers next to a woman in a garish crimson dress, who now looked as lost and terrified as he did. For Harper, The applause was a distant noise, the background music to the single, clear purpose driving her. She had spent years navigating rooms like this as a shadow, her presence acknowledged only through her husband. Tonight, she was not an accessory. She was the focal point. She saw faces she recognized, rival CEOs, banker scions, society doyens, their mouths slightly agape. In their eyes, she saw her own reflection, not as Mrs. Drake, but as the powerful, enigmatic Ms. Thorne, the identity she had silently forged, now revealed in a symphony of acclaim. Her unhurried, deliberate pace brought her to table 1. The air here was thick with unspoken shock. A server, his professionalism a small island of calm in the chaos, gently pulled out the chair that had been squeezed in between Victoria Hale and Alistair. It was a throne disguised as a seat. Victoria Hale, a woman whose face was usually an inscrutable mask, recovered first. The flicker of rage in her eyes at being so thoroughly blindsided was quickly replaced by the shrewd calculation of a master strategist. She saw the new chessboard laid out before her. "Harper!" she boomed, her voice a theatrical performance of delight as she grasped Harper's hand. Her grip was firm, respectful. "My dear, you have left us speechless, utterly speechless." She wasn't just being polite. She was publicly aligning herself with the new center of power. "Your generosity, your vision. It is a profound honor to have you with us." Harper inclined her head, accepting the tribute. "Victoria, it's a pleasure to see you looking so well." Her calm response was a coup, establishing that she was not overwhelmed, but completely in her element. She then turned to the billionaire CEO, whose account Alistair had been so desperate to land. A rough, self-made man, with no patience for pretense, he was already standing, his smile wide and genuine. He admired strength, and he was looking at its personification. "Ms. Thorne," he said, reaching past others to shake her hand. "The honor is all mine. I was just reading a preliminary report on ethical data encryption last month. Had no idea the mind behind it was right here in our city. Alistair, you sly dog, never mentioned your wife was a titan." The comment was ostensibly a compliment to Alistair, but the undertone was sharp, questioning. Alistair felt a flush of heat creeping up his neck. He saw a lifeline and grabbed it with clumsy desperation. He lunged out of his seat, trying to fix his face into a mask of pride and delighted astonishment. "Darling," he exclaimed, his voice a tight, unnatural imitation of joy. "What a surprise! You should have told me you were planning something so spectacular. I was so worried when you said you were feeling indisposed." He reached out for her arm, attempting to reclaim his role as the husband, the one in on the secret. Harper shifted her arm slightly, an almost imperceptible movement, but enough so that his hand grasped only empty air. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and her gaze was as cold and clear as Arctic ice. "Indisposed?" she repeated, her voice dangerously soft, yet it cut through the lingering buzz at the table. "No, Alistair. I believe the word you're looking for is underestimated, but I have never felt better." The public rejection, the quiet correction of his lie, landed like a perfectly thrown dagger. Alistair flinched, his pathetic smile dissolving, the blood draining from his face, leaving a pale, waxy layer. Having dismissed him, Harper's gaze swept over him and settled, for the first time, on Scarlett Lawrence. Scarlett, who had frozen in a state of horror paralysis, visibly shrank under the cold, assessing stare. It was not a look of anger or jealousy. It was a look of utter indifference, the kind one gives to a piece of lint on an otherwise perfect garment. Harper did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. She made an almost imperceptible gesture to a passing captain. "Excuse me," she said, her tone one of polite concern. I believe there's been a seating error. This young lady appears to have wandered from the junior associates section over there. She vaguely gestured toward the rear of the ballroom. Perhaps you could assist her in finding her correct table. The humiliation was absolute, a masterpiece of public execution. She hadn't called Scarlett a homewrecker or a schemer. She had done something far worse. She had rendered her utterly insignificant, a lost intern, a non-entity. Scarlett's face, already flushed, turned a deep, blotchy scarlet. Her eyes darted to Alistair, pleading for him to say something, to defend her, to do anything. But Alistair was an empty man, incapable of defending himself, much less her. He merely stared at his plate, his world collapsing inward. With a choked sob, Scarlett clutched her ridiculously small, ridiculously expensive clutch bag, her hands shaking. She pushed her chair back so violently it nearly toppled. Without a single word, she turned and fled, weaving between the tables in a stride of pure shame. The whispers and glances of the city's elite followed her like vultures. Alistair watched her go, another pillar of his fantasy world turning to sand, and at that precise moment, as if orchestrated by a vengeful god of timing, a new sound filled the room. It started as a few isolated vibrations, then spread, a digital wave sweeping across the ballroom. It was the synchronized hum and ping of hundreds of smartphones receiving a notification. Exactly at 9 o'clock, Harper's scheduled press release had hit. Victoria Hale, ever the professional, discreetly pulled her phone from her pocket. Her eyes scanned the screen, and her jaw tightened. She read the Wall Street Journal headline, "Vaughn Innovation's secret CEO, Harper Thorne, revealed in seven-figure philanthropic coup, announces revolutionary Athena encryption package." The story wasn't just about the gala. It was about a massive corporate move, a disruption in the tech world. Victoria looked at the futures for Thorne Innovation stock, which were already spiking in after-hours trading. She looked at Harper, who was calmly sipping her water, a portrait of serene control. And then she looked at the pathetic, sweating man beside her, her partner, who had not only hidden this immense asset from the firm, but had actively tried to discard her in favor of a junior associate on the most important night of the year. The sheer, monumental stupidity of it was breathtaking. Victoria leaned into Alistair, her voice no longer booming, but a low, lethal hiss, far more terrifying. "Alistair, my office. Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. sharp." She paused, letting the dread mount. "Don't bother bringing a briefcase. Just bring your resignation." Before Alistair could process the words that had just ended his career, the president was back at the podium, his face beaming. "And now," he announced joyfully, "we would like to invite our Starlight sponsor, the brilliant Ms. Harper Thorne, to say a few words." The spotlight swung back to Harper as she rose. The applause was even louder this time, thunderous and sustained. She walked past her husband without a single glance, her gown shimmering as she ascended the few steps to the stage. She was no longer just a donor. She was a visionary, a leader, the undisputed star of the night. She reached the podium, and the room fell silent. She looked out at the sea of faces, her gaze balanced and confident. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady and resonant. "They say that starlight is a message from the past, a flash of something that has been shining brightly for millions of years, even if we have only just now noticed its light. In my world, in technology, we don't look to the past. We build the future. We build foundations strong enough to support the grandest of structures. We create fortresses to protect what is most valuable." She paused, her eyes sweeping the room before landing, briefly, significantly, on the wreckage of Table 1. Sometimes, the most revolutionary potential lies hidden, overlooked, or simply underestimated. But true value, like a star, cannot be hidden forever. Eventually, its light reaches you. My company, Thorn Innovations, is honored to support the Starlight Foundation, which does the vital work of ensuring every child's potential is seen, nurtured, and given the chance to shine. Thank you. It was brief. It was elegant. And to Alistair, every word was a perfectly aimed blow. She had spoken of building fortresses, of hidden value, of the folly of overlooking true potential. She had delivered his eulogy without even mentioning his name. The standing ovation that followed was explosive. Alistair remained seated, a ghost at the party. The whispers and the searching glances were now unbearable. He couldn't breathe. He lurched to his feet, his movements clumsy and uncoordinated. He turned his back on the stage, where his wife was being celebrated, and began his own walk of shame. No one tried to stop him. No one seemed to notice him at all. He stumbled out of the grand ballroom, the golden light and the sound of her triumph spilling out behind him, before the heavy doors slammed shut, plunging him into the silent, indifferent hallway. He was alone. The silence that greeted him was 1,000 times louder than the applause. He had wanted to erase her, but in the end, he had only managed to erase himself. Alistair thought he was playing chess, but Harper owned the entire board. The takeaway: meaningful ending and CTA. What a finish. Harper's silent power move is the ultimate lesson. The best response to being silenced is to become the person holding the microphone. If you loved this story of justice served, do me a favor. Smash that like button, share this video, and make sure you subscribe for more stories where the underestimated always get the last word. And I have to ask, what do you think Victoria Hale really said to Alistair in that 7 a.m. meeting? Leave your best theories in the comments below.